Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. I'm going to talk about something that's very huge in a very, very short time, so I'm going to go quite quickly. And I've also got lots of slides because I know it's mid-afternoon, and it's the mid-afternoon slump when you might feel a bit sleepy. So I've got nice, pretty pictures. For those of you, firstly, who don't know the RNCM, Royal Northern College of Music, we're based in Manchester in the UK. We have 900 students, tertiary students. We've got 200 students aged 8 to 18. And we're also a public performance venue, so we have about 100,000 people that come in through our doors to watch stuff, which is incredibly important from a training point of view. Our mission, it says at the start, is to define future music. We have this very bold mission, which is very much about looking forward and looking where we need to go. As I just mentioned, we've celebrated our 50th anniversary last year, and there's three things in particular. And just as these were mentioned already, I just wanted to summarize these. These were the sort of backbone of what we celebrated in our public performance program. So first one is our relationship with the profession. Second one is about how we do new music and creativity and new ways of engaging. And then the third one is very much about our locality and how we engage our locality, how we connect with what's going on in the real world. So what I'd like to do is just a little snapshot of each of those, and I hope it'll give a bit of a flavor of our ethos at the RNCM, our kind of educational approach, and where we're aiming to go into the future. First of these, so side by side, if anybody knows our principal, Linda Merrick, is there sitting in the middle playing a clarinet. This is one of our side-by-side projects that we did in our anniversary. So as soon as you come as a student to the RNCM, you are treated as a professional musician. That doesn't mean you're paid, although sometimes you are paid for stuff, but that's an attitude and that's an expectation in terms of what we expect our students to do. And a lot of that as well is to do with context. So just to give you an idea, everything pretty much that you perform is in front of an audience. And I put paying there because that involves expectation in terms of what you do. This, by the way, is, I should say guess the piece, but I'll leave it now. You can see if you can work out. By the number of people on stage, I think there's 260 people on stage. We do about 300-400 professional engagements every year, so that's where we send our musicians out of the building. They do actually get paid for this, but this is very much about getting outside the conservatoire walls, engaging with the community, getting out into the open world, essentially. And when you come and do an undergraduate program, there's this whole strand of what we call artist development, which is all the stuff you basically need to know to be a professional. In third year, everybody does a placement that's not to do with playing on stage, that's anything out in the community. It can be management, recording, it can be learning participation, it could be anything. And then in your fourth year, everybody creates their own project based on what they learned. So this idea of getting to know what's going on in the world is very important. But the most important, I think, very powerful, impactful educational opportunity is playing alongside the very best people in the profession. And so what I've got here is these are our 11 partners that we have professional engagement schemes with on all sorts of different levels. So we've got 3 symphony orchestras, 4 chamber orchestras, 2 that deal in opera, and we've got a jazz orchestra as well. So really, really broad range of opportunities. And with each of these organizations, we have a scheme, and basically anybody who's a senior student can apply. They get auditioned. If they're successful, they can go and perform and rehearse with these groups. If you're not successful, you still get really, really detailed feedback. So rather than the old-fashioned thing of it's yes or no, if it's no, you get a lot of feedback as to why it's a no, so then you can feed that back into applying again. And I could say a lot about these schemes, but I think one of the most important things is this gap between higher education and the profession. It's almost sort of like that, I should say. And what this does is it closes that gap. And so many of our students have gone on to get jobs immediately, or even actually while they're still students. So this does work, and we have lots of evidence about how it works in terms of developing career structure. So for the anniversary, I'm not going to say too much about these, but just to give you a little flavour, as part of our celebration, we did some of the projects. Opera North is a very well-known opera company. This is a project we did whereby with the orchestra, with our students in the orchestra, our chorus, alumni at the front, We did another one. We had 2 trips to the proms. So this was a big celebration of the RNCM at the BBC Philharmonic Orchestra, based in Manchester. If you don't know the Royal Albert Hall, it's an amazing space. 6,000 people, and it was full. And this had, again, we had students playing in the orchestra, and I think 50% of the orchestra were RNCM alumni as well. So it was a big celebration in this incredible space. And another prom we did where our chamber choir played with sang with the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And again, this idea of treating our students as professionals, and the expectation, again, 6,000 people watching, it's quite a pressurized situation. What I wanted to say a little bit about is the ethos and the approach we take very much for professional musicians. And what we're particularly interested in is shared learning. So not so much the traditional approach whereby there's a kind of expert and someone who doesn't know as much, and it's about sort of passing on their knowledge. Where our relationship with professionals is most successful is where we have this very much a shared learning. And I just wanted to give one example of this, which we did this amazing project as part of our 50th anniversary, where we brought together our chamber choir and a string orchestra, and they did this 40-minute performance set together, and it involved a lot of movement. The choir welcomed the audience in. It involved a whole range of different types of repertoire. Everybody sang together, so at the end, choir and string players all got up and sang together. So it was quite a risky project. And the Caroline Pether, who's this extraordinary violinist who leads the Magic Camerata, led it, and her feedback, I wanted to show this because I think it's beautiful and kind of sums up our approach. I'm going to read this out because I think it's brilliant. So even though I was coming in as the experienced professional, I was actually going on a journey of discovery, experimentation, and risk, just like the students were. There was something beautiful in sharing that experience with them. It helped bring us together as one group of musicians searching rather than 2 separate groups, professionals and students, one group teaching, one group learning. We were all learning. Brilliant to be given the opportunity by RNCM to basically create a musical sandpit and play. So this beautiful way of working, which is very much based on a kind of non-hierarchical approach with the professionals, very much based on a shared experience and very much based on risk-taking as well, and professionals going on the journey. So we very much are looking at artists coming into the RNCM who work in this particular model. The second thing I want to just say a little bit about is our approach to new music. New music from way back in the 70s, new music has been absolutely central to what we do at the RNCM. And for us, if you come to the RNCM, it's important that you don't just learn core lists of repertoire from the past. You are fully embedded in learning new repertoire. And because as well we have a classical program and a pop program, they're very much running like this off each other and rubbing off each other, and that's very much changing the type of new music that's being created. 3 of our orchestral projects a year are dedicated just to new music. So full orchestra, all new music. The leader of the orchestra is always an expert in new music, and we always bring in an international composer as well to work along, but that's a really, really important part of what we do. As well as this though, we want our students very much to be developed not just as interpreters, although that's very important, but we talk a lot about our students being creatives and creators, and we're doing a lot of encouragement to get our students to new ways of programming, new ways of producing projects, engaging audiences, and really taking risks. And so if you come as a first-year student, for example, the very first thing you do is you're put in a room with the other first years, and you're put in a room with our head of improvisation. Second thing you do is you're put in a room with our director of choirs. So you have to sing, and singing is so important. So everybody should sing in a conservatoire. I think it's absolutely core to what we do. And I think we need this because society is changing and the art form has to change. You have to give these skills to our students. I just wanted to mention a few of the projects that sort of underlie this. So we run a lab week. So I was very struck, I started the RNCM 5 years ago, and I was very struck by pretty much all performance we did was based on the model whereby you rehearse something, you polish it up, and then you perform it to the best of your ability. So this kind of rehearse perform model. And what I wanted to do was I cleared out all the venues for a week, and we created this lab week, which is much more based on process and risk-taking. and trying a new project. Any student can apply. It can be like one person, it can be a full orchestra, any genre, anything in between. But the criteria to do something, it has to be something new to you, and it has to be something on the edge of your ability that you've never done before. And I was saying to someone earlier that what was great about it, we have had some projects that just really did not work, which I'm quite pleased about, because I think that's rare in conservatoires. We don't like things that don't work. I think if we're going to really push things forward, we have to allow some things not to work immediately, or to need more work in order to get to the point where they can then be performed as well. We have a new ensemble which has this slightly tongue-in-cheek name, New Orga. I don't know if anyone can guess what that stands for, but it's make it up as we go along. This is an orchestra. This is a new orchestra, a new type of orchestra. You can see it. You know, it represents all the instruments more or less you'd expect. If you want to be in this as a student, again, the only criteria is you've got to come with a very, very open mind, and you've got to improvise as well as read. And it's a really magical ensemble. And one of the great things as well is it covers all genres. It covers music from all around the world and can all come together in this very cohesive way. We have another group called Arc Ensemble. It's called Arc Ensemble because there's two of every instrument, like Noah's Ark. They do a lot of work around movement. You can't see here, but they're actually standing on a box. This is a particular piece they did where I think they've managed to fit 6 people on this box without killing each other somehow. But they do a lot of work. Again, it's more or less a traditional wind ensemble, but it's about trying to think, how should a wind ensemble look in 2023? Last one I just wanted to mention is this great festival. I could say a lot about this. This is someone you might know, Henning Kragerud, this extraordinary Norwegian violinist who came to this festival last year. This festival is all about reimagining old music, reimagining music from the past. So we'll take a work and do something with it to give it a new relevance. So this particular project was based around Goldberg variations for string orchestra, and the whole process around this was taking the variations, improvising around them. The way the concert happened, as well as lots of improvisation, Henning would stop and he'd go through each variation a couple of different times, and he'd ask the audience to suggest a character or suggest a way of playing, and then the orchestra would respond. What was beautiful about this at the end, I've never seen an orchestra so happy at the end, the amount of smiling, because they got to put their own personality into this project, and they were encouraged and allowed to do that, and to make suggestions about how the music should go. And I think, so that this festival is all around sort of new ways of approaching things, and it's all about audience engagement, and it's all about creative freedom within older music. I was going to talk about, we have a Creative Innovators Award, but I don't have time to talk about this other than just to say this is another project where our students can apply with an idea for a project. They get quite a substantial amount of money. If it's a good project, they're put in front of a very tough panel of innovators, and they suggest the idea, and if they get funding, then they can lead on to creating the projects. I want to say a little bit as well, just briefly, about, I mentioned how we're not just encouraging our students to play music from the past, but we're really encouraging our students to look at underrepresentation. Obviously, this was brought up earlier by Rob. We've developed a huge amount of work in this area over the last few years, and a lot of this is about resources, because staff students just don't have time to find the music. So we've created a huge amount of resources of repertoire, the broadest range of repertoire, to encourage our students, so that there's no excuse not to go and learn this music. We have this fantastic sitar player who's Jasdeep Singh. He's in residence with us. He's going to be in residence for a few years, and the whole idea of that is we're very much in this Western mindset of making music. How do we work with someone who's outside of that? How do we expose our students to a totally different way of working in a safe space? And he's working with every single instrument group in college over the next few years, and that's going to end up in something interesting. We don't know what yet. The last ensemble I just wanted to mention, this is our session orchestra. So this is where we bring together pop and classical, and we fuse them together. This is very much about blurring of boundaries. We talk a lot about basically the way things are going is the genres are very much blurring, And that has been driven by our students, because a lot of them don't really necessarily think, and certainly the way I was brought up about thinking these categories, that it's much more like that. And this is a 60-piece orchestra that comes together and very much works in that space. The third thing I just wanted to mention in this area is around, we talk a lot about encouraging our students to find their own voice. And one of the big changes now, if you come as an undergraduate, so when you get to third year, you can actually choose the weighting of your degree. So rather than the traditional focus that it was all based on a final performance and that was it, if you are interested in something very specific, whether that's psychology or community engagement or music and health, and that, you can change the weighting. So what we're seeing now over the last couple of years is students' ideas are being listened to and they're being encouraged. So before they leave the RNCM, they can really think quite seriously about the direction they want to go in. From a performance point of view, that comes out, we have this whole series called Spotlights, which these are very much where students curate whatever they want to do, things they're interested in. And we've had some amazing projects around free improvisation, projects based on themes of love, of friendship, sexuality, of blending old and new, all sorts of things that this totally comes from our students. No staff involvement whatsoever, and I think giving them that space is very, very important. We're seeing, because of this change, we're seeing a lot of students, the careers are very much going like that now. And I was going to just give you, just very quickly again, because I don't have time, but we have this, I don't know if anybody knows this extraordinary talent. So Abel, trained classical musician from South Africa, amazing South African heritage. He's slowly learned to bring those two together, and now he has this extraordinary career around the world. It's just absolutely taken off. But this idea of bringing your classical training together with whatever is inside you, I think is a very, very powerful thing. Another group that's just been started, come out of RNCM alumni the last couple of years, Untold Orchestra. This orchestra, the primary aim of this orchestra is to focus on positive social change. So it just happens it's an orchestra, but the primary aim is social change, and they're based in quite a challenging part of Manchester, and that's their primary remit, which I think is quite a beautiful thing. So just to sum up this bit, what we're seeing is this real change in collaborative music making, and this real shift from what perhaps can be called classical preservation to much more creation, much more co-curation, and much more communication, those three things. And at base level, the way I always think about this is very much about our students putting themselves in music, and it's ultimately about giving them space to be a human as well as a musician on a very, very basic level, which is very important. So these three things: creativity, flexibility within that, exploring underrepresentation, so having the curiosity to go outside what's the kind of well-trodden path, and agency. So our students need agency, the space, the ethos to find their own voice. And I think that those three things are absolutely key today. The third thing I just want to say a little bit about, so the third thing that was an absolute kind of bedrock to our 50th celebration is all about our local community. And we do a lot of things in this area. We have orchestral projects for young people. We have family days where students do projects. We have this beautiful project. So we do three operas a year, fully staged, etc. The third of these is a children's opera. And this is completely created from scratch. So we've got 100 students involved, 120 children. They start from a blank slate and they create an entire fully staged orchestra in the pit, literally hundreds of people on stage. And so it's a very magical project. Again, it's a way our students learn the skills of creativity, flexibility, communication. For our 50th though, we thought a lot about where we wanted to go, and we are an international institution. As I said at the beginning, we have 60 countries represented, but I'm very well aware we spend a lot of time thinking far away. We don't think so much locally. And so we started this new project which was called Explore. And this is the very first time we've done a project like this. It was about very much throwing open our doors to the local community. And what we did was we invited in amateur musicians, local musicians, community musicians, all to perform alongside our students. And it was an incredibly important welcoming project to bring people who'd never played in our venue, who'd never been into our venue, and allowing and encouraging our students to play with them, to play for them as well. And this mixing of different levels of music making is very important. In addition to that, one of the things we talk a lot about is that at the RNCM we want to give space for students to use their music to explore things they care deeply about, whatever that's going to be. And for the last couple of years we've had a theme for the year which is always about change. So we had a theme about migration, we had a theme that was about originality. And we put out a couple of themes to students for this year, and the one that came back really strongly was this. They wanted to do a year about sustainability and about relationship with the planet. So the question we're in the process of exploring now is what can and what should musicians do in response to what's going on with the climate and the environment? What is our role as musicians in response to that question? We're taking, I could talk a whole hours about this, but we're taking a completely cross-college approach. From a musical point of view, we have 13 projects that are responding to this creatively, and also we've got space for students to come up with their own projects as well alongside this, and we've got a whole research project running around what change will it make in our institution. We're also looking at the influence we can have on our students, our staff, our 100,000 people that come through the door. I won't say any more about that because I think I'm going to run out of time otherwise. But the last thing, so these three areas, I've really just sort of scratched the surface just to give a sense of the approach we're taking. So the three areas I mentioned at the beginning: side-by-side model, so our relationship with the profession, our approach to creativity, which is absolutely essential, and this utterly central theme of engaging with our local community, engaging with our audiences, engaging with the wider world. The word we kept coming back to when we were planning our 50th was a very simple word, which is community, and that we wanted to celebrate our community. So not only are students working together, that's a community in itself, but very much the community of students working with younger people, students working with amateurs, students working with the profession, working with our audience as well. And this whole idea that our students are part of a big hub of music making rather than these sort of separated factions. I'm okay for time, am I? So I'm going to just finish by what was the most important thing I was going to come to, which is where next. In the UK, there's a lot of change happening. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of cuts. There's a lot of changes in society. In Manchester, for example, the stat I use a lot is 69% of children in Manchester come from non-white backgrounds. And that is a big thing to influence what we do creatively, musically, how we engage with that, which is really important. So in terms of where we're going now in year 51, 52, we've launched a new initiative, which is called RNCM Innovate. And this, by the way, isn't a torture thing to get students to practice fast. This is an audience perception project, which is a really interesting project we're working on. RNCM Innovate has three aims. So the first of these is very much about taking a holistic look at what we're doing in the space of innovation, look at what we're doing in performance and research around new ideas and putting those new ideas into action. The second thing is very much about continuing to explore new areas, but also not only allowing, but really, really encouraging this new space, risk-taking, new space, new ideas, and really building on our tradition. And then the third thing is very much about this forum we're creating, which is about drawing together partners we have in the profession. So it's our relationship as a training ground with what's going on in the profession, and also our relationship between performance and research and how those come together and can feed off each other. Ultimately, this is about the intersection of training ground, the profession, and our society. So it's very much our civic role as an institution, which we think very seriously about. I was going to talk a bit about some of the research underpinning that, but I'll skip on from that because the last thing I just wanted to say was these are the 5 main areas. I've called them 5 main challenges, but for now, these are the areas we're looking at. So we want to work with our professional partners and other people on that question about environment. How as musicians do we respond to this enormous issue in our world? Audience engagement, where is the place of audiences in our training? For me, that's an absolutely essential thing. Audiences shouldn't be an add-on at the end. They're part of what you learn as a musician to do. We're doing a lot of work in terms of preparing our musicians to work and have a career in the world of music and health. So they're getting a training education in terms of working with people who've got Parkinson's, people who've got other things like dementia. We're thinking a lot about the art form, because the art form has to change and has to develop and has to move forward, and that's going to be a kind of key question of this whole project. And then lastly, creative development of professional musicians. So I talked a little bit about the profession. Again, I've just scratched the surface, but this idea that we bring in musicians who were educated 20, 30, 40 years ago, and our students' education is radically different now. And what we want to do is bring in musicians who can come on that journey with us, and we can draw them into the kind of approach we're taking. That's the end. That's just an absolute very, very, very fast snapshot. There's a lot more I could have said, but I hope that gives you a little bit of a flavour of some of the ethos, some of the educational approach we have.